case studies tonight, real experiences, stuff I lived through, me and many other people. And out of that, I'm going to highlight learning. I'll be deliberate about when there is learning. I'm going to give out a handout. I hope I've got enough afterwards. So, yes, take notes, but you will also get a piece of paper with the key learnings on. But I'll be deliberate about it. So, let's do the eye test. Let's start immediately. 2008, February 2008. This team had been doing some form of Agile for 3 months, so since December 2007. It's the first stand-up that I attend as coach. The entire team, this is the team area, the entire team is in the photograph. There are many things wrong here, but what bothers you the most?
Well, they're not facing each other, they're not facing the board.
Okay, they're not facing each other, they're not facing the board. Anything else?
They all seem to be looking to one person as if they're waiting for that person to say something.
Yeah, so they're looking at this guy, he's speaking at the moment. Yeah, okay.
Actually, there's nothing on the board to look at.
Okay, so the board is fairly scary, yeah?
That guy on the side looks like he's focusing on something else.
This guy?
No.
This guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my range was a bit limited. He's okay. He's an okay dude. Yeah?
He's not standing out easily.
Yeah, so there are many things wrong. More.
I would say the same about these two left guys. They're kind of not listening. Just
These guys?
Yeah. Like with an attitude where they're talking about like easy with my ball and something else. You know what? I would say that about the guy that's looking at the floor. He looks like someone who thinks about the story. I'm next to talk. What am I gonna say? Yeah, probably. I'm next to talk. What do I have to say? What did I do yesterday?
Yeah, you're looking at that yellow ball on the floor. Is that part of the
Sorry?
exercise? He seems to be looking at that yellow ball.
This yellow ball?
Is it part of the
And two red
exercise?
ones?
No, it's just a ball lying there. Yeah?
Looks like there's just one person who's taking the notes.
This person?
That woman, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so one person taking notes.
So I guess the guy with the yellow bat must be the talking stick, but he's not the one talking.
No, it's just toys.
Oh, is
It's
it?
just-
Well, perhaps that's the problem.
yeah.
So if you are not concentrated.
Maybe they just cross their hands behind their backs. It means that it means resistance. I don't know.
They're making decisions by hitting the ball into those two holes. And then
Yeah, it's not.
Okay, so as the suggestions reach the esoteric, who's that?
The boss.
So when I'm in any situation, my partners, my business partners call it I unholster my camera. So whenever you see me do this in a team, it means it doesn't mean I think it's a beautiful picture. There's something that I want to remember, that I go, whoa, problems. So I was standing here, I'm backed up against the wall, and I could see one of the team members hard at work, right there. This, by the way, is the Scrum Master. The reason why he's looking at the floor is because I trained him, and he's embarrassed. So we see this often. You train someone, and then they're too scared to ask for help because they're embarrassed. So I'm going to switch on the lights again so that we can see each other. But you know now what I was pointing at. How do you deal with that? What do you do?
Fire the person.
Go into the room.
Fire the person, go into which room?
Go into the developer's room.
That
The
room?
one inside. The one
Okay.
inside.
Call him,
Sorry?
call him over.
Call him over.
Ask him why he didn't show up.
When would you do that?
Now. When it's clear he didn't come.
So we're after the meeting.
Ask him before he's not.
Sorry?
Ask him at the beginning of the meeting why he's not there. Why he's not participating.
I would ask the other team members to explain to them what the impact of him not being there is on them.
What you'll also notice in many of the examples I give tonight is when I tell you what the point I'm trying to come across, you might experience a moment of, hang on, but that's unfair. So try and move past that really quickly. I'm asking you to interpret things that I had much longer time to interpret. The important thing is ask yourself, how can you use this going forward? And don't get too fixated on the example. So, tip number 1 that I learned the hard way: never, ever assume resistance. Don't think what you're seeing is actually resistance. So, our Scrum Master here was convinced that dude hates Agile. And he is the resistant one. He is the rotten apple. And that was the mistake. So don't assume. So now I can give you some more background, and then we can look at it again. So I mentioned they started Agile in December. I trained this individual, the Scrum Master, at the beginning of December. And it completely blew his mind. I remember in training, I could see him changing in front of my eyes. He just went, yes, this is the way I want to work. I could see that switch. At the same time, this individual, who is also the most senior in the team, was planning leave, his own leave. And he left a detailed list of things that needed to get done by the time he's back. How do you think the story ends?
None of it gets done.
How
So-
long was that?
None of it gets done.
No, but how long was his leave?
About a month.
Oh,
He took the entire December. Well, almost.
But it was over Christmas.
Yeah, so there was a portion where they all had leave, but there was enough time for nothing to get done. When he returned and saw that none of the things that he asked to be done were done, and he did a bit of probing, what do you think he was told?
It's this new process.
Sorry?
It's the process. We wanted to, but
So he immediately associated the process and the new process with things not getting done. The last bit of information that's important is when he returned, I call it the 11 o'clock syndrome. So when someone returns from leave and they arrive at work and they're nice and fresh and well rested, I usually wait till 11 and then I walk up to them and ask them whether they can remember being on leave. Because by then all the relaxedness have been beaten out of them. So at about 10 o'clock, the CTO calls him in and says, you told me these things are going to get done, and they weren't. Why? So, if I walked over to this guy, first stand-up that I attend, and I say, why aren't you with the daily stand-up? What do you think would have happened to me? There would have been nothing left. And I would have lost all opportunity to ever win him over. Don't assume resistance. And even when you see resistance, don't assume it's against something you're doing. Might be something else. So he got burned. He suffered personally. His reputation, his egos, he got burned. And because of a process. I don't blame him.
So unless he's the product owner, the real question is, why was his priority list not aligned with the product owner's priority list? Maybe he was the product owner.
So those are good questions. He wasn't the product owner. It does turn out that there were fantastic reasons why this stuff weren't being done. Prioritization kicked it out. But he was not included. No one put a note on his desk saying, before anything else, speak to us, quickly. No one bothered to contact the CTO and saying, you remember those things that were promised that are not happening? The CTO was really happy with what was being delivered. He just wanted the other stuff as well, because it was promised. Now, how the story ends, that hurt was so deep and so ingrained, he could never see himself clear of joining the team, of being part of Agile. He just couldn't. He could see the value of it, he just couldn't be part of it. So, eventually, he ejected himself first in space, so he became a specialist that was contracted in by the team occasionally. And eventually he ejected himself completely to a different company. A month after he joined that company, I was contracted to transition them to Agile. And what makes it really funny, and that's why I paused, he suggested me. Not only did he suggest Agile, but he suggested me as a coach. Yet here, he couldn't stomach it at all. It was just too painful. So, there are a few things that you need to remember on this slide. Don't assume resistance. When you identify it is resistance, don't assume it's against something you're doing. The last one, it's not business, I'm sorry. It's personal. Resistance is about the individual. So forget that slogan, it's not personal, it's business. It is personal. Unless you get to know the individual, you're going to come unstuck. So these offices are beautiful offices. They're located in vineyards. Him and I went for early morning walks before work, talking about other stuff. It took about 4 or 5 walks before he told me the story. I knew the story, but he needed to tell it to me. I needed to hear it from him, and then we could move on. There is a book called Don't Just Do Something, Stand There. It's worth reading it. Because it's again the opposite of what you would expect. So a good thing whenever you want to act on resistance, just remember that for a second. Don't just do something, stand there. Just stand and think for a second. Remember, we see the world as we are. We don't see the world as the world is. So most likely the things you're observing is you, not the world. Okay, so making Agile work, sadly, or good, depending on how you look at it, is constant change. You have to remember, whether you're a beginner in Agile or seriously advanced person in Agile, it can strike at any moment. Resistance can strike at any moment. And the reason for that is this vicious cycle. So usually problems occur because of change. Change in the market, change in competitors, change internally, whatever. That leads to problems. There are solutions. What I'd like you to take away from this is the very act of coping with resistance. Remember that word in tonight's title? It's not managing resistance. It's not dealing with resistance. It's coping with resistance. The very act of coping with it is change in itself. So what I'd like you to take away from this is, unless you are very, very sure of what you're doing, make tiny changes, small, and see how they pan out, because the act of changing changes the system. So when you encounter resistance, and after tonight you're going to have a myriad of tools in front of you to choose from, don't grab them all and apply them to the problem. Not good. Choose one of the tools and apply it, and see how it turns out. Because that very act has changed the system. I need to, you've got to indulge me. Who can tell me what that is?
It's the Borg cube.
It's the Borg cube, yes. There's the Starship Enterprise. And this is the Borg cube. Can anyone tell me what the famous slogan is from the Borg? Resistance is futile, yes. So the full sentence is, we are the Borg. Existence as you know it is over. We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Resistance is futile. So I get to walk into many companies where Agile has failed, to mop up and to help get it going. And I've often wondered whether the person that preceded me in trying to get it to work, if their name wasn't in there. I see it a lot. So I'm a change agent. I get so excited with Agile. It is fantastic. It's the best thing since sliced bread. Everybody should work this way. So I will implement it because I know it's so much better than what we're doing at the moment. I will assimilate your differences, but know that resistance is futile. So, please, that's wrong. It maybe works for the Borg, although I don't even think it worked for them. It doesn't work. Resistance is not futile. If anything, resistance is needed. So it'll come up again later on in tonight. If you implement something and you experience no resistance at all, it's just smooth sailing, you are headed for a cliff. And you're going to find yourself running out of solid land very, very quickly. Resistance is needed. Definitely. Now, a few points here. One, it's needed. Does anybody know why it's needed?
So you don't do the wrong thing.
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons.
Maybe so that the resistors on the, well, first of all, they can own the eventual solution rather than continuing to
Yeah.
say it's not mine.
Exactly. Us as humans, we need to feel as a need. This is not a want, this is a need. We need to feel that our actions have some impact on the outcome. Some. So if you tell me resistance is futile, then I have no impact on the outcome, and I'll never ever buy into it properly. If I offer resistance and I'm convinced otherwise, or I see a different perspective that helps me accept it, that's okay. I had an impact, I had a voice, I had an opportunity. And then you own it. So that's the one thing. The other thing that I want to bring in here, which contextualizes tonight, we have, or there are 3 types of powers. We don't all have them all. It's not like superpower, like flying or anything, but we all have there are 3 types of powers, and we all have varying degrees of them. So the one is power of. I've got a bag. It's filled with whatever you want. I'll give it to you if you change. So that's power of. I'm not talking about that tonight. Telling someone to change because you've got something they want, you give it to them. I'm not talking about that. The second one is power over. It's also called one up, one down power. So I have a parent, I am a parent. I have a teacher, I am a teacher. I have a boss, I am a boss. It's one up, one down power. Change or I dock your pay. So I can inflict some form of control because I've got power over you. There is the third one, which all of us have, and that's the power with. Easy way to remember it: mind, heart, hands. All you have to deal with resistance is what you think, what you feel, and what you do. Now, people often look at consultants, and I think Dave can support me here, that come in from the outside and they say, oh, you have it so easy. But think a bit about what we do. I'm not your boss. I can shout and scream, but at the end of the day, what difference does it make? I've got nothing you want. I can't barter. All I have is what I think, what I feel, and what I do. That's what tonight is about. So, why I'm saying that is anyone can affect change. How much change is open to discussion, but anyone can affect change. So, resistance is in fact valuable. I'm not going to try and explain that. I can wave my hands, I can give you examples. The only way you'll believe me is if you experience it. So I'm not even going to try. When you experience it, you'll see it. You have to respect it. So it's only valuable if you understand and respect it. So I'll spend a few seconds on respect, and then we'll dive into the understanding. The respect that I'm talking about here is like the canoeist would respect white water. And that metaphor plays out quite nicely. If you go into white water and you fight it, you fight Mother Nature, I promise you Mother Nature will swallow you whole and spit out the skeleton. It is simply way more powerful than what you are. However, if you respect it and you work with it, and you just steer this side, steer that side, Now you can use the strength and the power of whitewater to guide you through troubled spots. Resistance is exactly the same. Go head to head with it, you will lose. I guarantee you that. It is simply too strong. But respect it, use it, guide it. Now you've got an ally. Very powerful. Something, if you want to follow that metaphor a bit further, what you will see that some whitewater rafters do is when they approach a really dangerous piece, they pull off and they walk that area along the embankment. They get to know the water. They actually spend a little bit of time out of respect to get to know the water. It's the same as what I said earlier, but don't just act. Wait, breathe, take a look at what's happening, make sure you understand it, and then you can go in. So the respect thing, I can't force it on you. I can explain it till I'm blue in the face. At the end of the day, it's a decision. You make the decision to respect it. So that's all that I'm going to cover there. The understanding bit, I'm going to dive into detail. So that is what comes up next. Whoops. Just a little bit of background of me and why I'm saying this. So I'm interested in lasting change. I'm not interested in transient behavior. Experience warning, I don't have anybody else's data but my own. So this data comes from about 12 companies that transitioned to Agile. In total, probably about 35, 36 teams. 4 of those transitions were enterprise-wide, from ground floor all the way to the top, to sea level. I'm an XP coach as well, so I love code, I really enjoy it. It's just sad that everything I can possibly teach you about writing good code will have about a 10% impact on lasting change. 20% impact is from understanding the process, just learning the mechanics of working differently. The rest is change management. How to get it to carry through, how to get it to stick. Of the rest, that 70%, about 30% is pure management, the mechanics of how you do it, and about 40% is what we're talking about tonight, the resistance as a result of it. Like I said, that's just personal experience. If you've got experience, please validate it to you and let's have a conversation about it. Next thing you need to know about this, sorry about this. That's a cave, quite a pretty one in fact. I alluded to this earlier. Resistance is in our DNA. So that's another tip. Again, you'll have it on the handouts. It's in our DNA. We are programmed to resist. If you live happily in your cave many, many, many years ago, and you're not naturally cautious about venturing into the unknown, you're going to either end up really hungry or get eaten. So we are programmed inside. Our environment has changed, but we're still programmed that way. Once you realize it is in our DNA, it becomes easier dealing with people that are resistant to what you're saying. It's a natural response. And, of course, people didn't just stay in their caves, they did wander off. And there's a nice little equation. It's so simple, but it's deceptive. You think, oh yeah, but once you go think about it, it's, oh, this is not so easy. The cost of not changing plus the transition cost, so the cost of actually affecting the change, must be less than the benefit at the end. Otherwise, why change? Then you've net negative effect. So our brains, your being will not allow you to change unless that equation pans out. And now I'm really going to upset your evening. In front of all that, you've got to add the word perceived. So if you can prove on paper that where you are now is really, really expensive, and the change is not that expensive, and the benefit at the end is astronomical, I can prove it to you. There it is. Unless you perceive it that way, that mechanics, that those neurons firing to encourage you to change, won't. It's a self-defense mechanism. So there's another tip. That equation, I'm going to make it even more complex. Sorry, sometimes my talks end up being a bit of a downer. So when I say cost comes in multiple currencies, not just money. Money is just one currency. Let's hear some examples of currencies in change, in resistance to change. What currencies come up? What do you think of?
Status.
Status.
There's the favor bank.
Sorry?
Favor bank?
The favor bank, yes. Time. Absolutely.
Technical debt.
Sorry?
Technical debt.
Technical debt, yes. So when you are exposed to resistance, preferably even before that, when you're thinking of initiating a change, think about these costs. Think about how they're going to affect you. If there's time at the end, I'll just quickly show you a few techniques to deal with cost, but I think it's too specific for now. So I'm going to plow on through. 2010, asked to come into an organization. The first day I arrive, the product owners are busy with a massive planning session. They've been doing Agile for 6 months. Each of these individuals, including the individual here, is a product owner. There are 7 of them. There are 5 teams. What do you think is happening here? Remember, they've been busy for 6 months.
Not much.
Resource contention?
Sorry?
Resource contention?
Resource contention. Yes. So not much resource contention, but dig one level deeper. What else is happening here?
They look sort of like they're getting focused on the process, maybe a bit too much if they've been here long.
Okay, so the first part, the focus on the process, I'm not sure I agree with that. But the last bit that you said, they've been here too long?
Yeah, you said that this wasn't just a quick meeting.
Okay.
Burnout.
I don't think they could sit further apart in that room as where they are.
Correct, they cannot sit further apart. But they're pitched. So there's no animosity here. Yes, there's resource contention, but they arrived at the meeting 6 months down the line. I'm sorry, people won't pitch when they're really, really angry at each other. So there's some good here. What is right down, if you dig through all the levels of nonsense, what you'll find is they're tired. They're exhausted. They've expended themselves. Tip number next. Oh, by the way, I'll have 2 books at the end that you can read if you're interested in more of this. And you can get a lot more detail in those books. There's also some online stuff. There's a concept in resistance called, well, it's actually on change, but it's called assimilation points. It's a type of currency that each of us have. It's easy to remember. It's again like the Borg, you'll be assimilated. So it's assimilation points. It's how well can we assimilate change? How well can we digest it? You've got a fixed amount. When that is depleted, that's depleted. Cannot take any more. Just, you're punch drunk from all the change. You can shout, you can scream, you can threaten people. They will not change. They can't. The assimilation points are depleted. They're finished. So, tip number next. When you experience resistance, take a little bit of time and ask the individuals what has come before you. What could have happened that drained them of their assimilation points? Don't use those terms, those words, please. Just have a social conversation. So you might find they've just been through a very hectic time and they're just tired. So in this team, after seeing this and after having a few conversations, I realized whatever changes I'm going to make have to be really, really subtle and easy to digest. I need to get the energy levels up so that they again see hope. They can again start to digest change. This is a beauty. So, some background information. That guy there, we are very, very good friends now. We weren't. He hired me, asked me to come in. I thought it's going to be a difficult sell. Money didn't even come up. He immediately said, my business is tanking. There's a legislative change coming up in 3 months. We haven't produced a new feature in 4 months. The latest bug fix release is 4 weeks late, and there's no sign of it improving. And the number of bug fixes that are in that release, if I look at the issues list, then an eternity won't be enough to get through it, even if we take on no extra work. We are screwed. Can Agile help? Of course, yes. So, his cost of not changing was astronomical. There was almost nothing that I could lay in front of him around, around cost of transition or benefit at the end, even a tiny benefit, just making the legal requirement, just making that 3 months down would have him solved. Just as a side issue, here he's smiling. This was 2 months down. There were 4 teams. This is one of the teams. 2 months in, just 2 months, it's 8 iterations. We had the legal requirement met. We burned through maybe half the issues list. There were about 400. We were down to about 200. And we had done 2 major feature releases in addition to that work. This dude was happy. He was my buddy. Scrum Master, Product Owner, team members. Where did my resistance come from? 3 months in. Okay, we've got Product Owner. There's a process of elimination. Next guess? The team, next guess? Sorry? Scrum Master, okay, and who's left?
You.
That's actually not funny. Later on you'll see why, but you're quite, it's ooh, that hurts, but.
Let's just go with the owner,
Yeah.
your friend.
So Mr. Business Owner, 3 months in, he hated me. We had shouting matches, almost daily, that I'm embarrassed about, but I was caught off guard. We've done all these wonderful things. It's, how can you not be happy? Well, it blew me away. It got so bad that I asked another coach to step in on my behalf. He got thrown off site in 2 weeks. And I was asked to come back by that guy. He said he'd rather shout at me than at the other dude. It took me a long time to figure out what had happened. The currencies of change changed. That immense pain he was feeling was no longer there. We removed it with Agile, easy, gone. But more change was needed. We weren't done. So the currencies changed. The relationship between the currencies changed. And it blew me right out of the water. I didn't see it coming. So not only do you need to know the cost of not changing, remaining where you are, the cost of the transition, and the reward at the end, you need to know how they pan out over time. And please, here I'm not talking about detailed dollar value to the last cent. I'm talking this kind of resolution, and this is the tool that I thought I'd not do, but just... So this is typically how I would do it. That's my resolution on time. I actually don't even care what the axis is or what's on it. So I go, right, money. How much are we going to need for the transition and blah, blah, blah. I usually have different formats for where you are, the transition and the reward. It'll look like that. That's the resolution to which I draw it. It's gut feel. We're going to not need much, we're going to need a lot more, then a little bit less, then a lot more. Political capital. Mr. Friend was willing to burn all his political capital on the initial change. All of it. He was a dead duck anyway. He was going to be without a company. Who cares about political capital? Have it. 3 months later, oh, not the same story. So, in terms of willingness to spend political capital, lots. Almost nothing. I did not see that curve. Had I taken a few moments to draw it, I would have figured it out. Draw the curve, look at it, look at what it tells you, because it'll help you deal with resistance. 5-minute rule. This I just sneak in because I think it's valuable. The 5-minute rule goes, when you're actively listening, for those of you that care, there's something called active listening level 2. You can go read up about it. When you're actively listening to someone, an individual or a team, they will tell you their problems and how to fix it in the first 5 minutes. You just need to be listening. I just snuck it in there, but it is a valuable tip. Why I snuck it in, this is a technique I use with teams when I start, just so that I figure out what's happening. I give them sheets of paper and markers. Green is always good. In this case it fell apart a bit, but that's why I've got it on here. Blue is question mark, I'm not so sure, and red is not working at all. You'll see these colors repeat themselves in the following slides. Can you spot the one that gave me chills? Four, right. So things like, is development time going to be reduced? Okay. No, really, those are easy things to deal with. That's in that 30% slice of the pie. Is Scrum able to minimize, look at the choice of word, war. This is the highest level of conflict. This is actively fighting. War between business and IT. And I couldn't believe it when I saw this. Look at how they bracketed themselves. Dev team, BA, testers, team. In little square or angle brackets. When I saw this, I thought, well, team formation is not a problem. They already define themselves as a team. But war? This is where you want to run. And you think there are easier ways to die than this. This is the team that wrote it, or teams that wrote it. Can anyone guess who wrote those sentences? That sentence number 4. Who initiated that? It's very subtle. It's difficult to spot. That good?
Yeah.
No.
The guy with his arms like this, in the blue shirt, he's got his arms like
This one?
Yeah.
You've got one of them. Bingo. Other one?
The other guy was there.
One on the
Back
side
line.
that looks like black button.
No. Okay, so,
Oh, seven says.
Another guy on the left.
Second
sorry?
from the left.
The guy on the left or?
Second from the left.
There.
He's got his arms crossed.
Okay, so it was actually this individual. Ronnie is a name. What you cannot see, that's why it's quite subtle, this circle is closed. She's actually sitting outside the circle. She has physically separated herself from the discussion. They were the ones that chanted war. The takeaway here is when I noticed the word war and I considered running, and I really did, I just thought of what excuse can I use? Because that choice of word is significant. So I had a couple of conversations, and seeing this, that's why I took the photograph, I started to get a hint as to whom I should speak to first. This individual and this individual knew the company inside out, top to bottom. They've been there for a long, long time. Their words to me were, we've seen this kind of initiative before. It's not going to work. So, next step. Before you initiate any sort of change, make very, very sure you're willing to follow through on it. Don't start stuff that you're not going to follow through on. So here is an important differentiation, and it's valuable to you, I hope. Failure is following through. Abandonment is not. So if you abandon a change, you initiate a change, you experience resistance and you abandon it. All you've done now is you've given people ammunition to resist more in future. It's built into them. It's an immune system. I resisted, it vanished. So it couldn't have been that good. So next time I'm going to push again, maybe even a bit more. So it's learned behavior. Failure is completely okay. So one case study, not this team, different team. They had some sort of initiative, something to do with Agile. It was a total catastrophe. And I realized we're never, ever, ever going to win. There's just too much bad history. So we killed it, publicly. We sent a memo around, very nicely worded memo. We had conversations, we had meetings, we publicized, socialized it. That initiative died. It was a complete failure with a list of reasons and why it was caused and what we learned out of it and blah, 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 blah. We killed it. We publicly killed it, which gave us permission to start something else. Because publicly killing it is completely different to abandoning. So let's say you walk into a situation where you experience a lot of resistance and you realize it's because of previously failed attempts. What do?
You acknowledge it for one.
You acknowledge it, yeah, and then?
Make sure that you're gonna deliver whatever you promise.
Okay. So
Ask why it failed.
So ask why it failed. Make sure you're going to deliver everything you're promising. On that, because you're experiencing so much resistance, and that's the point, the next tip that I want to highlight here, small changes. Remember I said it before, small changes, small wins. The documentation that if you read the books will refer to small wins. So I had a chat with these individuals, and then I included a bigger group, and eventually the whole group. We had these multiple conversations, hierarchical conversations. And together we found the smallest thing that we believed had a chance of success. We initiated it, and it worked. Then we initiated another one, and it worked. 4 months later, we were making changes in leaps and bounds with no resistance at all, because the assimilation points had gotten back up again. So when you're faced with bad history, small is good. Small wins, yeah.
Question, is it valuable or detrimental to try to do a comparison kind of game, or whatever you want to call it, gap analysis between the old attempt and your new attempt, and why it's different, why it'll be better, or something like that? Or is that a waste of time? Or is it even bad that it will even hurt you?
Unless it is a safe environment, and unless you've got experience doing it, don't try it. You're going to get hurt, because you're fighting the numbers game, the understand, the justification. You're talking about perception. You can do a comparison till you're blue in the face. It can be right there, and people won't see it. So rather,
Focus on you.
yeah, rather change. It's going to require less of your energy to choose something small and affect that than try this whole comparison thing. And
Because it's not a rational game. It's a
not at all.
Right.
Okay, one opportunity presented itself. This lady, Ronnie, very pleasant person. I was having a conversation with her, a social conversation around the water cooler, and she mentioned she's got a diving business. She's a deep dive instructor, and that she's not getting through her work. And when she said those words, my ears went ting. Here's a small win right in front of me. So I spent about 2 weeks slowly but surely equipping her with tools to make her business work better. So the win doesn't have to be in the organization, it can be outside. You don't have to read it. This is a mail she sent me. Consider me converted. So the win was in a private capacity, and she came back to work a different person. So you don't have to look for small wins in your work. Yeah, this is a good one. There's a lot to read through there, and I'm running a bit late, so I'm going to zoom through it. Green is good. You know, enjoy creative work. It's nice to get it out there, but it doesn't help as much. I enjoy the people. That's good to know. Communication between teams, red, not so good. But those kind of things are easily solvable. Once you get the mechanics in there, they're there. Processes are not followed. Yeah, okay, so I can see that. We can get around that. Then these two humdingers. Notice the change of handwriting. Non-multi-choice staff are remunerated differently, i.e. no incentives. Double underline. Too many chiefs, not enough Indians. Okay, training is okay, if we can train you quickly. When I read those two, it was again, wait, this is going to be tough. It shows you how much you learn from this. It's a 20-minute exercise, and you learn a lot. Not to teach the team, to teach you. That confused me. So I attended the daily stand-up. Well, that's okay. It's not great. The conversations were okay. Board is a bit wishy, but those things are solvable. And I wondered, where is this non-staff coming from? So I started walking the halls, exploring the offices, and I discovered this little area. You see full desks, busy, lots of things, stuff everywhere, empty desk, empty desk, empty desk, empty desk, empty desk, occupied desk, occupied desk. Huh? What's happening here? Oh, that's the labs team. They are the clever one. They do the cool new stuff. They get incentivized for the cool new stuff. Us on this side get nothing. Your resistance depends on the stakeholders and the influencers. And the takeaway on this point is the influencers and the stakeholders might not be in the room. They might not even be the ones creating resistance or offering resistance. Yet they are resistant. Just by them being there. There's another thing that needs to be taken away from here. In the beginning I said don't just act, don't just do, stand there. There comes a time when you've looked at the data, you've looked at the information, you've looked at where things are going, you've decided you're going to follow through on this, you've looked at the costs. When it's time to act, it's time to act. This department was killed by the end of that week. They were a showstopper. Even though they're not part of the transition I was working on, they were a showstopper. I didn't just blindly go in, I did accumulate or get all the information. So their latest piece of code that was going to be given as a framework to these guys to implement, it's an online video feed platform. and they had written a new framework. I ran a couple of tests on it with the team, not in isolation, with the team, and it fell over at 4 concurrent connections after 4 months of development, 4 weeks from delivery. Easy kill. Just make it go away. Non-negotiable. For as long as it's there and they get incentivized for such poor performance, your resistance will go up exponentially, or the resistance that you experience. So when it's time to act, act. There are 3 more slides, but it is half past. The notes will be there. Do you want me to do the last 3?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Okay. If you need to leave, please do so. I won't take feet. Remain mindful. Change is done once it's been internalized. One of the books that I'm going to show you explains what internalized means. It means that change has become part of the very fabric of the culture of the organization. Unless it's been internalized, you can still get regression. It's awesome to see. Believe me, I've seen it. I've cried myself to sleep about it. Fantastic initiatives. 18 months of endless success. Delivering better month after month after month. Teams accomplishing stuff they never thought possible. 18 months later, progression starts to happen. 6 months later, they're worse off than what they were 18 months before. The first time I saw this, I wanted to run away. How could this happen? If you take your foot off the accelerator, when it comes to resistance, remember it's like white water. It's much, much, much more powerful than what you are. So the illusion that you've won before it's been internalized is just an illusion. The moment you step away, it'll creep out again, and it'll destroy all your work. In fact, it'll be a net negative experience.
So how do you tell if it's been internalized?
If you're wondering, you're not yet there. That's all I can tell you.
Okay.
So those experiences, I'm sad to say, head in shame, I've had more than one of them, have left such deep scars that I now don't assume at all. I make sure it's really ingrained. So if there's any doubt, I just assume it's not. So wait, let me lead into that one because it's the last 2 and it's spectacular. A company hired me. Now, you've got to understand who this company is. I was really, really honored that they asked me to help. They do online trading. About $1 billion a day travels through their system. They have got 0 risk tolerance. Can you digest this risk? No. They cannot cope with risk. A coding error can destroy not only them, but their clients. They've got 0 risk tolerance. And they were horrible. So they just survived with brute force, months of testing. And they needed to become more agile because their competitors were starting to zoom past them. So it was cool. 6 teams, 4 teams down. 4 teams, I'd work with them, we did 1 team at a time. Worked like a charm. It was about a year into the engagement. They were pumping. Those 4 teams were humming along. CEO calls me in and he says, I'd like you to go chat to the Perfects team. Okay, I don't mind, but may I ask why? Because originally we said the Perfects team is doing so well, we don't want to mess with them. Why should I go look at them? I don't think they're quite on par. Okay, by all means, here I go. Out comes the old exercise of paper. Again, in the interest of time, I'm not going to let you read too much of it. I'll just point it out. So first of all, these are developers, technically minded individuals. When I saw the way they presented it, I immediately went, whoa, even before reading. Very seldom will developers write this way. So, okay, let's start reading. Blue is a puzzlement, so I'm not sure what it is. Customer is king till management thinks otherwise. Okay. One-man teams suck. What? This team was originally earmarked not to be touched because they're doing so well. They've been working together for 4 years. They're house friends. What? Working hours, remember, greed is good. Working hours, good, best vibe, best place to work. Next piece of paper, different table. We split into 2 groups. Each group wrote its own. Working over weekends. What? Unscheduled ad hoc meetings. The information that was hitting me was so confusing. I didn't know what to do.
How big was this team?
Sorry?
How big was this team?
8 people. So my first reaction, remember, you see the world as you are, not as the world is. My first reaction was, everybody lied to me. They are not as good as what they thought. No, hang on a second. So, these people are good. Otherwise, they would never have survived in this industry. It's not that. Think, talk to people, have interviews, go for walks, go have coffee. Endless one-on-one conversations, even more conversations with multiple people. And then it hit me. This was a very, very expensive lesson for me. And it came up in our earlier discussion. You're dealing with a system. You don't affect change in one part of the system and believe it's not going to have an effect. Tip, take a systems view. Take a step back, relax, look at the bigger picture, and see how this is going to pan out. So just put yourself in their shoes. They were the 18. They were awesome. They were so good, they were highlighted as not to be messed with. A year later, the 4 inferior teams that interface with them are kicking their butts, delivering 2, 3, 4 times faster than what they ever could, showering them with changes that they simply cannot digest. And no one gave them any love, because they were destined not to be touched. Very, very expensive lesson for me. So hopefully it can save you some pain. You're dealing with a system. Unless you look at the entire system when understanding resistance, you're going to come unstuck. It was no use, and boy, did they resist me. Well, they basically hated me. If they could burn me at the stake, they would have. Because I represented everything that went from their happy little world to where they are now. If I fought them on that, So they resist me and I push back. Look at my track record. 4 teams, very good. You must listen to me. That would not have worked at all. I would have failed. So once you understand the system, the resistance that you're facing starts to get personality. It starts to get a face, something that you can relate to and that you can talk with. How would you have felt in that situation? It took some time, but they came around. And they had lots of fun.
So you were hired by this company and initially left this team alone, is that what happened? And then
Yeah.
and then you worked with the other teams, and then these slides you just showed us came when you went back to
Yeah.
So next time around, you would go and say, sorry, no can do, I need to.
No. No, look, there are times to do a big bang change and there are times not to do a big bang change. Those are also expensive lessons, but that's a different topic. I never, and I'm ashamed to say this, I never had coffee with them and spoke to them before that day. Yes, I knew them, I knew their names, we passed and, oh, how are you? I never got to know them. Had I gotten to know them, I would have seen how the system is going to behave by making these changes elsewhere. I would have been sensitive to them. I would have included them in the process. Not ask them to change, but just include them. Are these changes still okay with you? Now that we're producing faster, can you digest these new features that we're throwing at you? There are 2 books in my prioritized backlog of reading. Managing at the Speed of Change. It is a controversial book. Some people, the person used quite crass language, so not swearing, but he talks about winners and losers, which in today's environment is taboo. So he basically says you're a winner when or you're a loser when. If you can find it in your heart to read past that, and his very strong opinions, this book is solid gold. When it comes to change and coping with resistance of change, it's about a 300-page document, book, and about 200 of those pages are pure gold. He also explains internalization better than what I've seen anyone explain it. Leading Change, much lighter reading. It's a very pleasant read. But if you were to read only one, I would suggest the top one. In Vancouver, I trade under Prefetch Consulting. In South Africa, I trade under Scrum Sense with business partners. There are 2 situations in which you need to ask for help. The one is when you're out of time. You don't have time to learn all the lessons yourself. One thing I've learned is that me nor any of the other consultants have got a solution ready for you. But what we can do, and it's not just me, it's all the other coaches and consultants, what we can do is help you avoid the mistakes we've made. And that gives you faster time, faster response, because you don't have to venture down alleys that we've been burned in. The second time, or second situation where you need to ask for help is when the cost of recovery is really, really high. Best ask for help. Coping with resistance can blow up in your face. When you've got time and the cost of recovery is not so high, learn. Try something. Start small. Fantastic way to learn. Anyone can do it. Remember, mind, heart, hands. But there are times to ask for help. I'm going to give you a handout of this. It's got everything in bullet point that I mentioned tonight. Sorry for going over time, and thank you very much.